Welcome to Miss Martin Muses on this Easter Monday. And, well, it's a rather sober one, and not the one I expected to talk about today. But just received the news that overnight, apparently, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, has passed away. Now, we can't say that any of this is expected because he's obviously been sick for quite a while. He was 88. It's perfectly natural that a man of his age would be passing, and we know that he had been having trouble with pneumonia and he'd been sick, and even things that we had seen with him had you know it was time. It was going to happen. So in any case, so here we are. We find ourselves in a true advocantist situation. Of course, there were some people, maybe not as charitably as they could, who thought we were all along. We weren't. He was a valid pope. He was a valid pope. He was validly elected. Everything that Pope Benedict did to not be the pope was correctly done. But yes, he has passed away. And when the seat is vacant, that's what sed vacant means. This means we don't have a pope. Instead of, we have a pope, we do not have a pope. And Greek Letters Guy is saying Happy Easter. Yes, Happy Easter to you all. Thank you for being here on this Easter Monday. And the Easter season actually goes on just as long as Lent. So we are going to be here for quite a while, kids. Easter goes on well into May, and I don't know. I haven't looked at the dates. I'm, just obviously a little bit distracted by the passing of the Holy Father. I was actually putting together a Monday musings and saw the news. So very sobering morning for everybody involved. It's going to be a very busy next couple of months in the Catholic Church. And I'll be here for it because, my goodness, we're going to be having a conclave. We're going to be having the announcement of the new pope, all of that jazz. And of course, what direction will the church be going in? Now, I kind of hate to say it, but maybe a better direction? Of course, I want to pray for the Pope's soul. Just the way when anyone else passes away, at the end of the day, he was a human and he's now before his maker. And that's a bit of a sobering thought. There's an expression, the fires are hotter for a pope. And the Lord says, he who has a lot demanded of him, much will be demanded. So in that sense, yeah, I'm trying to be nice. Oh gosh, I'm going straight to the hot fires at this point. All right, Salty Traveling Sea, hello. The coming conclave must move the Catholic Church back to its written away from those who support the ongoing globalist transhumanist revolution. Happy Easter, says Rachel Percy Art. Now the process begins as they try to find the next pope, which I wonder if they will step back from the more progressive path he was pushing. Yeah. Well, I have a thought about that. I'll get to that. Thank you, everyone, for being here. You Catholic? Yes, I am. I agree. Salty? Yes. Okay, here's the story. The Lord protects his church from good popes and bad popes. Sometimes a good pope can be a problem as well. But thankfully, whenever there were areas where he started skirting around things doctrinally or things that had to do with the deposit of faith, he was surprisingly firm And even when, like, certain documents would come out and everyone was like, "What?" And then I hate to make this comparison because it's not the same. It's not the same. But in a way, he had a little bit of Donald Trump in him. You know how Donald Trump will say stuff and it'll be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Great idea, great idea, great idea." And then the next day will be like, "Nah, not such a great idea." That was in many ways the way that Francis was. And the problem with that approach is, dude, you can't do that when you're the Pope. All right. It's bad enough when you're the president. Okay. We could argue that all day and all night, but it's a different story. But the Pope has to be crystal clear. He has to be very cautious with his words. And when it comes to the matter of what we call faith and morals, there cannot be ambiguity. For lack of a better word, the Pope has one job. And considering all of the extensive stuff available to him, especially nowadays, it shouldn't be that hard. You have one job: to strengthen your brethren. And that's what Jesus said in the Last Supper. Strengthen the brethren. I have prayed for you because I'll find the scripture somewhere in there. Okay, maybe he had more than one job because then Jesus also said to feed my sheep, feed my lamb, to preach the gospel, but especially the one about strengthening the brethren. And that's where, unfortunately, he, I hate to say it, he failed. He actually did the opposite. It was incredibly demoralizing, and it was very odd to live during a pontificate where the one guy who's supposed to be kind of cheering you on and making you feel at least halfway good about being a unicorn in this crazy world didn't seem to be doing that very well. And yes, got way too much involved with politics and stuff. And things that were not of the faith, and that confused people. That confused people. He would often speak off his opinions, which of course he's able to do, but that was not his job. Like, once you become the pope, you have to kind of put all that stuff aside or just keep it up with a very trusted confidant or something. But there was always a bit of a joke that whenever the Holy Father would speak on an airplane, we'd be like, "Don't do it. Don't do it." Because it would, like, hurt my soul for about 5 months. All right, let's see what's going on. RIP, thank you for being here. Gorilla Censored Thoughts. Ubaldo T, thank you for being here. Good morning, Salty. Good morning, everybody. $10,000 say $1,000 says the communist African cardinal. You heard it here first. Well, let me tell you something about African cardinals. They're solid. They were the ones fighting back against a lot of what Francis was doing, and that whole disastrous blessing of same-sex couples, which didn't make any sense because you could always bless anybody for at any time if someone asked for it. Because then they came back, it's like, "Oh, no, no, we weren't trying to do anything like for marriage or anything like that. No, no, no. We were just saying if they've got issues going on." I mean, you mean like everyone else on the planet can get a blessing for? And because people were saying, and people in Africa and everything, they were like, "We're not going to do this." You know, so, frankly, I would welcome one from Africa right now. I do know what you're talking about, though, if it's a political one, but, I mean, they're also the ones that are trying to keep the Church of England in line. Hadn't seen this. My condolences to all Catholics at their loss. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Like I said, I have very mixed feelings, and I feel terrible, to be honest. I don't know which I feel worse about. I honestly don't. Greek letters guy says, "My favorite moment of the cardinal conclave is when they elect a new pontiff. When they elect a new pontiff, a cardinal has to grab. Wait, no, 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 no. We don't do that anymore." And Yes. And that's, yeah. W Never mind. Alright. Not the news I wanted to wake up to. No, I mean, and no one wants to wake up to that news. And at the end of the day, he was a man, and he's a man who is meeting his maker. Am I correct, says Archer Collin, in thinking that the Pope is considered to be humanly fallible except when he's speaking from ex cathedra when he used the phrase speaking with God voice? Absolutely. Absolutely. However, okay, Catholics, especially post Vatican II and stuff, do not tend to be very well catechized. And I think that that's also what caused a lot of confusion. Not to mention, we have a globalist kind of thing going on where they want to confuse and demoralize the faithful. And that was something that Pope Francis did not seem to understand. He didn't get it. I he yeah. If I'm sounding hesitant, I'm trying to be nice here. Yeah, no, no. And well, surprisingly, that's what I was saying earlier, Archer Collin, when he was talking about what we call talking about faith and morals. He was solid, solid. It was just kind of everything else. I'm going to be talking about probably his most controversial and most hurtful thing he did to the faithful in a little bit. He undid a lot of the really solid work that John Paul II and Benedict did. And we as the faithful just kept going, why? Why? Why are you doing this? This just doesn't make any sense for you to do this. And this hopefully might be the last time they try a little experiment like this. You got to get a pope that can speak languages for one thing. Um, he would speak in Italian and in Spanish. He had some passable English and stuff, but he wasn't fluent the way most modern popes have been in like 5 and 7 languages, especially English. And I'm not trying to be a big English supremacist here, but you have to be able to speak English completely fluently and not rely on translators. That also never helped thing. Let's see. Klaus Schwab resigns and the Jesuit Revolution anti-pope passes. Interesting coincidence. Yeah, it will be. Well, I'll say this. He was not an anti-pope. He was not an anti-pope. He was the pope. He was not an anti-pope. Whether he poped well is another story. You abolish that part in the coronation of the pope. No, the coronation of the pope is something completely different. You're bless you. You're getting conclave, election, coronation, different. And we don't do the coronation anymore. They do an installation mass. Let's see. Is a Polish post-Easter holiday. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I wasn't sure. I didn't understand. And yes, today's Easter Monday, and we are in the octave of Easter, and Easter has 5 weeks, just like Lent. So it's going to be good times. Archer Collin says, reward and faith changing as the world does. John Ringo has a very thoughtful, for me as a non-Catholic book, where the Pope has to make changes after an alien invasion kills most of humanity. My gosh. Hello, humans and other creatures. Hello, Snortopoopus. Hello, hello. Yeah. Let's see. A berry Easter candy on sale Monday. Do polar bears celebrate Easter Monday? That's a good question. Rachel Perciard said, it seems like his decisions later in life were less reliable in line with Catholic tradition. Well, sort of. Oh, you mean his decisions if you're talking about in his whole entire life or in his pontificate? Because, let's see. Sort of Poop says, I'm keeping my snoot zipped on the late Pope. All I'll say is I hope he'll find the wisdom that he lacked in life. Yeah. Definitely prudence. Well, and he weighed into things that the popes modern popes are not supposed to do. Like, sometimes when you see those really overdone miniseries about, "Oh, look at this awful pope from the Middle Ages," or things like that, or the Renaissance, and it's like, yes, we kinda got rid of that for a reason. Like, the weighing in on science. It's like, yeah, that never goes well. All right, that's not the Pope's job, and they shouldn't have been. And whenever that happened, you saw the damage it has done because they've strayed from their mission. Things that are polarizing, just I hate to say this, but something as simple as I'm praying for the world, Jesus is Lord, that kind of stuff. And sometimes, yes, there would be some forceful things to speak out against. And Francis was good on this. Francis was good on the life issues. He was. He was incredibly solid. I mean, some of his language when he was talking about pro life issues and let's just say the Transformers, it was like, I was like, dude, that is hardcore. Well done. The commentary around it would not always be the same, and I think that he also would confuse people on the left as well, because everyone's like, "Oh, he's gonna be doing this," and then he would be like, "No." One of his most famous, and one could argue one of his more brilliant moments was on that 60-minute interview when that one chick was talking about, "Oh, maybe we'll have women priests, maybe we'll have women deacons, what do you say what do you say that? Do you see that happening?" And he just looks at her and he goes, "No." That was solid. That was solid stuff there. Sometimes people wonder, is it the people around him that were a problem? Like some of the documents and some of the things that you would see, especially toward the end of his life, where you're seeing where he didn't, he seemed to be on the verge between life and death, if you know what I mean. And yet he's coming out with these big, huge documents. Was that him? On the other hand, yes, he did not give a solid direction to the church, and he didn't give it to the faithful. And it makes me sad to say so because that's not the way it should be. I mean, when Pope John Paul II died, I was like, "Oh my gosh," I was just devastated. I was just bawling my eyes out. And when Pope Benedict resigned, or renounced rather the papacy, I was very upset. I mean, incredibly upset. I just feel this numbness. I feel this kind of sober feeling of, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Let's see. A lot of time in purgatory, not the time to think in purgatory. Yeah. And that's what, kind of hoping, that you go through the refiner's fire. As we celebrate anything involving eggs, Archer Collins says, Miss Martin muses, it's actually very well thought out, I think. The basic story revolves around a Jesuit-led mission to convert the aliens. Oh, well, why not? Salty Traveling Sea says, I want an American Pope summoned by the book Irish or Polish guy that's done manual labor drives a Camaro. Well, the best one is Cardinal Burke. I really was hoping that he was going to be elected in the last one. I think he's too old. Well, technically, you're not too old to be the Pope, but I don't know if you can take part in the conclave. Well, you see, that was one of the first kind of decisions that Francis did that made us start to get a little bit concerned. He removed Cardinal Burke from his position. There were some other actions that they were going to do against him as well. But the outcry was so bad. Everyone was like, "Dudes, this is a good man. This is a good cardinal." He was the apostolic signatura under Pope Benedict. But yeah, I don't see him being elected now. Trying to think. They're not going to do an American Pope. I didn't catch the last remark. Late Pope supported Transformers. Which part Autobots are depicted? No, he did not support them. He did not. Which is surprising because it seemed like things were contradicting each other. But when he actually spoke on it, he was solid. which would always kind of shock us a bit. Will the new pope be more conservative, hopefully? Well, I don't like the word conservative. Let's just use the word Catholic and a good pope. I was saying earlier, the pope, it's like you have one job. One job. Some of the political stuff and all that, even like being head of the Vatican and stuff, that the country, that's all man-made. That's not what the pope's job is. The pope's job is, as Jesus said, strengthen the brethren, feed my sheep, feed my lambs, clarity, leading the church, preaching the gospel, and strengthening the brethren. A lot of people forget that. Of course, you're supposed to reach out to the sinners and all that. Of course, you are. But actually, the Pope's commission is to strengthen the brethren. The brethren are the Christians, the church, the people. And he seemed sometimes to just demoralize us for no reason. I talked about some of his decisions about some solid people, though I think in many of those cases is because that they were maybe pushing back against what he was doing. And yeah, they weren't going to be having that. Yeah. Good morning. Pope Francis would support the Decepticons. He has this suicidal empathy. Oh, interesting. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. And you can have empathy for something as a person without, I don't know. Wasn't it the Philippines, which had a cardinal whose name was Sin, just asking? I honestly don't know. He was literally just a satellite office for the WEF. St. Basil or St. John Chrysostom Orthodox? Well, technically Orthodox, in the sense of what we think about being from the Orthodox, but Catholic. Good morning, Miss Martin Mods in chat. Hello, Soul Extractin. Hello. Yeah, like I said, I'm trying not to be too doom and gloom a little bit right now. Well, these are things, though, that need to be said. These are things that need to be said. Because, first of all, the office of the Pope is firmly planted. Upon this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And even as rocky as things have been through this pontificate, the gates of hell did not prevail. The gates of hell might have come knocking a little bit, but it always seemed to just teeter back from that precipice. Well, look who it is. Salty Traveling Sea has given a sticker, and it is 99-cent sticker. It is a rose. Thank you so much for your sticker and for your support, and you get a rose. Thank you. Let's see. Greek letter. Oh, wait. Let's see up here. You're being a good bear today. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be a good rose. We'll see how that turns out. Norproto Lifeform says, Teresa, I'm curious how much change the church has made in the years and an institution that has survived for almost 2,000 years. Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, the biggest change that happened has already happened was during the Constantine, when the church came out of the hiding and the big persecution and stuff. But as far as the core of who she is, it has actually changed very little. Some of the externals, perhaps, but not who she is. Not who she is. Let's see. It's Greek Letters Guide. Not my place to express opinion on what kind of pope I'd want. Since I'm not a believer, maybe you should get a female pope like in the Middle Ages. It should make things interesting. Well, no, we never had a female pope. That's a legend. Well, think about it. What is pope? Pope means papa. A female dad? No. No. Gosh, if you want to know why there shouldn't be women clergy, women priests, look at what's happened to look at that speech that lady gave on Inauguration Day. Yeah, we're not going to have a female father. Hello, Tracy and Company. Hope you're having a good Easter. Well, I'm having an interesting Easter now. Now, Some of his stuff that he would write was actually pretty good. I mean, pretty good, pretty solid stuff. I even used him with my Catholic Splaining online trolling. I think that he was dead on. He was absolutely accurate when he was talking about the whole doctrine, or is it a doctrine? Theologians out there correct me about that you cannot use sin to defeat sin. Totally solid stuff there. Totally solid stuff. Stuff about the Ten Commandments. I went 30 minutes in the Vatican Library, says Salty Traveling Seed in North 50 miles of shells of ancient and hidden mysteries. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Hello, Biggles. Hello. Yeah, I woke up to this news. I woke up to this news, and it definitely is news. Greek letters guy. Oh, since you brought it up, the Orthodox hate the pontiff with a passion. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Well, that's a whole other story. Whole other story. Whole other story. What about the Counter Reformation? Says No Pro Life Form. Uh, change in the church? Well, not really. I mean, nothing really changed in the church then. Now, you're probably talking about the Catholic Reformations. Historians, we tend to call it the Catholic Reformation because that's a more accurate term because it actually began before, long before Martin Luther. It started in the late 15th century. Well, as far as changes, I mean, it codified certain things and definitely came down harder on a lot of the abuses, for sure. Like, a lot of the abuses that had been going on, and it did make the church, especially, perhaps in Europe, a little more global in the sense of a little more centralized. I would argue that gave us some fantastic doctrinal definitions rather, because the only time the church would have a council, like for example, the Council of Trent, was to define something, like something came up. This whole idea of sola fideism. Okay, so the church was like, okay, let's lay this out, babies. And they did, and boom, was it solid. So yes, for sure that I would argue, though, in that era, what really changed things was the exploration, the entrance into the so-called New World. The church doubled in size. We could argue about a lot of things how it happened, but inarguably speaking, we did have that happen, and we had the whole Our Lady of Guadalupe issue, which made people go boom. So definitely, the church did expand with travel, etc., and new discoveries. Rachel Percyart says it feels like a different time to be a Christian, no matter if you're a Catholic or Protestant. Yes, it is. It is. It's very difficult, and that's why we needed to have someone like John Paul II or Benedict. We needed clarity. We didn't need ambiguity. Like some of the ambiguities that he dealt with were more things to be hashed out by the laity, not by our leadership. He needed to just steer the ship, not swerve it around, and sometimes he swerved instead of steered. Actually, he did more swerving than steering, and that's a sad thing. Never let women be in charge of anything that affects a lot of people. It always backfires. Ouch! Salty Traveling said no feel of Pope one. I mean, there were 3 popes. Forget which war that was. Okay, there were 3 contenders for the pope. You're talking about the Great Schism. There was always one pope, but there were people contending for it. People claiming to be so. That's where the whole anti-pope thing comes in. I know we sometimes get really fussy about definitions, but that matters. Yes, we did have an anti-pope, but people weren't entirely sure which one it was. So what they did was they had some resign, and I think there was one that was a valid one. Never mind, I'd have to go into it. But there was one that was valid. I think they had the valid dude resign. They're just like, okay, everyone just resign and let's just solve this, and then we'll work it out later. You're talking, yes, the worm of Nantes. It might have been the council that solved some of it. And let's see. Archer Collins says 2 wrongs don't make a right. Exactly. Greek letters guy. Now you wonder why after a certain point, it's a fictional story. Of course. The Pope denied he's faking it in case the Oblivion remaster gets released today. Oh, Steve, you're oh boy. I like your version of the story. I like your version of the story. He just wanted to play video games. Based and accurate. Is the Vatican Library not open to the public? Well, it is, but not the archives and the so-called secrets. Like, oh, we know we got lots of secrets in there, but of course, there's loads of things that are not open to us because they're like old and ancient, and they don't want people touching them and breathing on them, like what happened to those caves in south of France. There were popes in both Rome and Avignon for some time. The third one came along with recall. Yeah, that's yes, the Great Schism. Oh, whoops. The Pope dies on Easter in Vatican time zone. Oh, that is true. But technically, he died on Easter because we got 5 weeks of Easter. I mean, Easter isn't over. We got a lot of Easter. So everyone keep out those eggs. We're now in the octave of Easter. So, today's Easter Monday, tomorrow's Easter Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then we have the second Sunday of Easter, and we're going to go all the way up to the Ascension, Pentecost, all that good stuff. But yeah, so technically, we're all covered. He died in Easter. And anyone would want to go to the great beyond in Easter. I mean, it's not a bad time to go, but definitely Easter Sunday, Easter, it's just the way it's supposed to be. I would not mind doing the same. Why not? Pope John Paul II died on Divine Mercy Sunday and during Easter. Not the real one, the deep catalog of relics and artifacts from around the world. They need extra special permission and supervision. That is correct. If you watch the show Manifest, that came into it. The Vatican helped them out with something. It was actually kind of cool. I don't want to give a spoiler if you haven't seen the TV show. Very good TV show. Very good example of a good, solid, believe it or not, white father in a nuclear family. I think one in France too. Yes, it is. Oh, I'm not even going to read this out loud. Yeah, you're talking about the Avignon papacy. There were valid popes in Avignon, and Catherine of Siena was not happy about that and told the Pope, "Be a man and go back to Rome." It's already a meme that he passed after shaking hands with Vance. Yeah, Vance is like the last one to kind of see him. Oh my goodness gracious. Vance keeps growing on me. Well, I'll tell you, Vance is finding his feet. He's finding his feet. Steve Kenobi says Christians and Catholic priests need to stop bending over for that other religion. It's backfiring hard. That is definitely a discussion for another day, but yeah. And not all of ours do, but definitely the Church of England. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm not going to say that ours don't either. Trust me. Look what's happening in Ireland, for crying out loud. But there are also many that are fighting the good faith. The irony about the Orthodox and the Pontiff is that, Archer Collins says, if I recall correctly, the Pope is actually a title position than the Orthodox Church, whereas the Pope is an Anglicanization of Papa. Now, you are correct. They call him the first among equals. So they recognize his office. The issues were the scope of that. And of course, it's far more complicated than that. Totally agree. Neuroporeal Lifeform says, I learned about Avignon from the book Between Two Fires. Imagine Black Death caused by demons and the Avignon Pope was taken and replaced by demonic force. Oh my gosh. Book I read before Lord of Chaos. Major Percy Art says, it feels like one side is weaponizing our empathy and desire to be accepting is peaceful. Yeah. Well, they couldn't beat us one way, so they're trying to beat us another way. I keep trying to tell anyone that'll listen. Does anyone listen? No, they never listen. That, oh my gosh. How do I say this? They're just seeing this as a counterattack from the last time we beat them at Lepanto 400 years ago. All right, condolences to Catholics and you, Miss Martin. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Like I said, I have very mixed feelings, He and I it's like a father that you appreciate, but you feel doesn't get you. I think we had 3 claimants to pay oh, yeah. Yeah, the Middle Ages, yes. Archer Collins says the Christian Europe was for some time split between which pope. Yeah, oh, yeah, everyone was split. That's why finally they were just like, "Just resign, and we'll solve this." Oblivion is better than Skyrim, says Norpoleon Life from Dark Brotherhood, and that game rules. Oh my gosh, now we're having some controversy. Yeah, there you go. Oh, please. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. The doc. Everyone's talking about the Dark Brotherhood in Oblivion. Yeah, actually, it hasn't come out, Steak, yet. By the way, I feel awful. This Steve Kenobi says, "I told the Pope a joke once. All he did was faith palm." Wow. Rewatch The Greatest Story Ever Told. John Wayne is a Roman guard that takes Jesus to the crucifixion. Yeah, he's the one that says, "Truly, he was the Son of God." Vance is a meme machine. He sure is. Oh, he's doing like the upload thing. Based in Sterling never change. Archicon says, "I'm feeling that the children's song Sur le Pont d'Avignon may be related to the Avignon papacy." Could be, or I think it was just about a bridge. I honestly don't know. Everyone Google. Raceman Prociart says, "The head of the Church of England, unfortunately, King Charles, has spoken about how all of European culture was because of Muslim influence. That should make people concerned." Yeah. Well, all I have to say is hashtag Thomas More was right. Steek says, supposedly it comes out at noon Eastern if the rumors are true. Well, I will hold you, sir, personally responsible if it's not true. You hear me? Steek says, "It's too late for me to change. I have actually never considered it either." Yeah. Well, you do change. Sometimes you shave your beard and cut your hair. Checkmate. All right. The areas I think I've said where, unfortunately, the Holy Father just makes me sad. He really gutted many communities here in the church with I forget what the name of it was, but the in the Latin Rite. How do I say this? You can tell when I'm starting to get concerned because I kind of hesitate and I'm thinking about my words. Here we go. Here's my thoughts. We have several rites in the Catholic Church, many that are underneath the Pope of Rome, if you will. That's one way to define it. So I think 21, 22, maybe more. I don't know. Somebody Google it for me. Now, the Latin Rite is the one that we have, the one that this current Pope is involved with, the one that the largest one. Okay. If you're going to go to a Catholic church, especially in the West, you're going to be going to a Latin Rite church. Most people don't know it. Heck, most Catholics don't know it because Catholic education sucks nowadays. That's why everyone went to the Protestants. All the influx of Protestant converts, of which I was a part, and that we were part of this kind of revolution of, hey, let's explain this stuff. You have to explain it to people and explain it well, and not keep playing these little weird mind lefty games or something post Vatican II. That this can be described and this does need to be described, and that you need to use those skills. You need to use preaching skills. You need to use pedagogical skills to get people to understand the faith. So that's my little tangent here. So in the Latin Rite, there are the main way that the Mass is celebrated post Vatican II is sometimes called the Novus Ordo. It was called the ordinary form. That is what the Holy Father Benedict coined it in Summorum Pontificorum. So you've got that. You also have the extraordinary form of the Mass, sometimes called the Latin Mass. I don't always like to call it the Latin Mass because Mass can always be said in Latin. The new Mass can be said in Latin. But the Mass, the way it was said one could argue from almost the very beginning, but definitely solidified during the Council of Trent era, the Catholic Reformation era. There's also what we call the ordinariate form, the Anglican kind of thing going on. That's Latin, right? Where it's very much like what you would see in a Church of England, but it's Catholic. Okay, that is also within the Latin Rite, and there's like the Dominican Rite. I know I'm boring everybody now. Everyone's running away. To make a long story short, for basically no reason whatsoever, he came out hard against people that like the Latin Mass. And I mean hard. Now, there's lots of conspiracy theories why. But the loosening, especially that Benedict did, of saying any priest can say it and just opening it up. It's like, hey, if people want it, give it to them. It's part of their legacy. We're allowed to do this. Like, what the heck? What's wrong with y'all? And these churches were like bursting at the seams. These masses are always bursting at the seams. Is it big enough to take over the quote unquote new mass? No. But still, it was bringing in vocations, priestly vocations. It was bringing in religious vocations. And I used to love going. It's just beautiful. And it's the only place where you can really, truly have some of the greatest music ever written in Mass. All right. He just stomped on it. It tore apart people. And we were like, why? We're people that are going to Mass. And people that tend to go to Latin Mass or like some more traditional Catholicism, they're the ones that are staying. It's like, hey, we're staying here. We like you. We like being Catholic. We're with you. And just stomped all over us and being snarky and talking about being backward. And we're like, how about you strengthen the people that actually like being in the church? And then he would bend over backwards for people that hated the church, that didn't like the church's teachings, didn't like the teachings of Jesus. And it was like, this is backwards. You're supposed to strengthen the brethren, not crush the brethren. When the faithful are being stomped on, we're supposed to be stomped on by like communists and stuff, or people from the world. We're not supposed to be stomped on by our Pope. And when it has happened, it's been a horrendous scandal and done terrible damage. And it was like a self-inflicted wound that didn't need to happen. It didn't happen. Didn't need to happen. So out of all the things that he should have done, or he didn't do, that the damage that he did, that was probably the greatest. And that's what we're hoping we can reverse. And it can be reversed. It's not a matter of faith and morals. All right. I think the Great Courts has had some lectures explaining the splits within the church. And Salty Traveling Sea, I've heard about the remaster 3 days in a row now. They may retcon the lore to Skyrim. Oh, I don't know what that means. Archer Clown says, oh, believe me, there are a few memes and videos about His Majesty's religious leanings. The Greek letters guide, Jesus wants your salvation, Allah wants your obedience, wants your enlightenment. I don't know what that one is. Wasn't it the Synod of Whitby which decided the use of Latin Rite over the Celtic Rite? Quite possibly. Everybody Google. Salty Traveling Sea says, remember what the Fed said about Catholics who wanted the Latin Mass here? Put a dangerous radicalist. That's exactly it, too. Yeah. We were put on a terrorist list. So while our government's cracking down on us, our Pope was cracking down on us. And it's like, what's our crime? We like Latin. We like being Catholic. We're the Latin, right? Who like Latin. We like Gregorian chant. We like the rosary. We like the Bible. You know, we like everything that makes us Catholic. And it was like, how dare you? And I think that is why it was so discouraging for us because, hey, it's not as though everyone in the world is loving us out there. Okay. It's not as though it's like easy out there in the field. All right. And then to have our own Pope kicking us for no reason. That is, oh, and priests. Oh, priests were so discouraged during his thing. I mean, who would become a priest under that pontificate? He was crapping all over priests. Hey, why can't we get priests? I don't know. Maybe quit kicking them. Now, and then of course the ones that did need a good swift kick to the where somehow were being elevated. And I think we all know who I'm talking about there. Yes, we definitely remember that. So, yay, we're being persecuted. Why don't you come and kick us a little harder? It's so sad. It's so sad. You see, and that's what I'm saying. It's so sad that on this day I can't be sad. Isn't that awful? I mean, I appreciate all the good thoughts and the good things felt this week. But it's so weird. It's so weird. I went to Latin mass at Salty Travel and See with my Catholic grandparents in the 70s. Ah, okay. Yes, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Well, and what I remember is talking about things being backwards with Latin, and then you go to the liturgy in the Vatican, and like they would have Latin in there. It's like, oh, what's going on? Now, of course, it wasn't the Latin mass, but I mean, it was Latin, and it's like, so okay, so tradition's okay for some people and not for others. Now, what people like Benedict did, which was great, which I think was truly in the spirit of Vatican, it's like, hey, people want Latin, give them Latin. People want vernacular, give them vernacular. We can be flexible here, kids. We're the Catholic Church. We're universal. All right? And understand that when you had the Latin Mass, it generally was one Mass. Like, so you'd have like 500 of the newer Masses and one of the Latin Mass. Okay. Oh, I think some of the concern was that a lot of the younger priests were really gravitating toward it, and a lot of the young people were, a lot of the young families. And there were forces, we know that there are forces in the church that don't want us to succeed. Put creative demand to your beings regardless of your proof. Not necessarily. Because it has to be a matter of faith and morals. You see, and that is where there wasn't prudence, unfortunately, with Francis. I think we have an old Catholic church in this area. I'm not sure if it's where they sit with regard to the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, if it uses the word old Catholic, it probably is not. I like to throw out, think of Mel Gibson. Yeah, he's not in communion. He was Latin. You know how he felt. Oh, Cthulhu is a giant man flayer, like evil god thing. Oh, okay, thank you. Isn't that a little damn? Yeah, well, that's what we're saying is that's why people didn't understand why he was doing it, or taking it away. And that's what I'm saying. Entire communities were hurt because, in many cases, because of demographic changes, particularly in the United States, for example, you would have a situation where there weren't really a lot of masses or churches were going to be closed, but they would say, okay, well, we'll bring in like some priests, guys from the priestly fraternity, St. Peter, to come in and say Latin Mass. And boom, you got this thriving community. And so when that was kind of taken away, or it was kind of handed over to some of the bishops to choose, if you will, it really tore things apart. And it also seemed that whenever there were genuine situations of maybe there was some discipline that needed to be done, there was a lot of looking the other way, from what it should, if they were on the left. But if they were on the right, boom, a hammer coming down like I don't even remember in my lifetime. Those are the kind of situations that he did not steer the church very well through. I it's sad. It's It's a very sad situation to be in. But it's the truth. Like I said, the Pope had one job. And hopefully the Holy Spirit will help us with a little more with this. Maybe sometimes we have situations like this current pontificate to make us realize, hey, we can't be doing this. I mean, we were going in the right direction. Now we do know that there was a lot of globalism stuff going on, and that, speaking of which, certain situations, even political, well, let's just take the faith out of it, where it just seemed like coming down on one side and looking the other way for other sides. That's also not really what the Pope is supposed to be doing. Yeah, that's why we say he doesn't pope very well. I used to say that he didn't pope very well. Sort of Poop, it says, our school hosted, no pun intended, a Greek Orthodox Mass one time. They would call it the Divine Liturgy. I was a dumb cub and spent half them wondering how you said Amen during the Eucharist. Oh, dear. Archer Collin. Miss Martin says, when you talk about the different masses, are they just different language and procedure, or are they substantially different? No and yes. How's that for clear as mud? Difference in language and procedure is probably the best way of describing it, but there are always elements that will always be the same no matter what rite you go to. There will be like a liturgy of the word, there'll be some sort of penance, and then there will be the liturgy of the Eucharist, the canon, some version of that. Even in the Byzantine rite, which is based off of the Greek Orthodox, the Mass of, or the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, you can follow it, even if it's in a totally different language. Like, I've been to Maronite rite, I've been to Byzantine rite, I've been to ordinary rite, the Anglican thing, the Dominican even, and Latin Mass, the extraordinary form, and of course, ordinary form. I go to ordinary form, but I definitely love the extraordinary form. It's substantially the same. It's the same but different. What makes the extraordinary form particularly appealing, first of all, there is something kind of mysterious, in a good mysterious way, about the use of Latin. It's also unifying, because ironically, think about it this way, that the bigger we got, the more global we've gotten, the more Latin kind of ties us together. Like, I remember going to the Latin Mass, the extraordinary form, with people that spoke, people from, Asian languages, French, Spanish. We could all go to the same Mass because the core of it was in Latin and everyone had a missal in their own language. Now, the only part that maybe you couldn't understand was the homily, but hey, fine, sermon, I'm sure he's talking about Jesus. That's great. But we were actually more unified. Well, when you have the vernacular, you will be separated by language. I should say Polish as well. So, also, the great music, things like Gregorian chant, things like the mass settings that, say, Mozart did, those were set to the extraordinary form, so they fit well in there. So you're just going to have a much more aesthetic experience. Also, they go ad orientem. The priest goes ad orientem, and there's an use of an altar rail. Just lots of things that you think of when you think of Catholic. Those traditions. So it's just very, very beautiful, very, very beautiful. And a lot of people like that because let's just face it. If we wanted to go to church to be like everywhere else, we just wouldn't go to church, would we? We want to go to church that has something different, something to bring us to transcendent, to bring us closer to God. No. Okay, I'm just going to say Greek letter guides. Google it. Yes, a pope can absolutely be wrong. Yeah. hmm The Holy Spirit does. It's not called Catholic dog. Yeah, I'm just saying. Just Google it. Yeah. All right. The statue put up in the Colosseum surprised me. Oh, are you talking about some of the questionable art choices? Do they have different aims, purposes? No, it's the same purpose. That's why you can go to anyone. I mean, it's the same. It's just how it's done. And a lot of it has to do with cultural things. So people, do have a lot of things rooted in their cultures that are very beautiful. But for the most part, no, they're particularly solid. Like if you want to have fun, if you wanted to have fun, Archer College, go to different ones and see how they are. Now, if you go to one of the ordinary forms, they have it over there in England. You would find that it is almost identical to a very high Church of England service. The difference being the canon of the mass will be completely solid. Um Okay. Yeah. So they're talking about language. Salty Traveling Sea says Eastern Orthodox churches in Eastern Europe are incredible. Even small village runs off in the woods. Incredible energy. Darn right. You see, and that's what I'm saying. It's like there's a certain energy there. Now, they pulled out of their butt a few HOLESs on Twitter to say they're being schismatic. Because yes, there are people that go to the extraordinary form, that go to the Latin Mass, that are sitting around being jerks all the time, saying this is the only way to do it. The new Mass sucks. It's not valid if you're not this. And they're like, you see, so that was like the excuse. It's like they're being divisive. And we're like, yeah, a few buttheads are being divisive. But if being divisive were a way to suppress a valid liturgy of the church, well, then wouldn't you argue that it would be the new Mass? Because look at the stats there. Okay, just in America. All right. Yeah. So it was not based on solid reasoning. Yes. Oh gosh, it's so beautiful. Yes. And a certain pride that they have in it. And that's just the thing. It's like, we can all have pride in what we love. Archicon says I've heard the argument with Latin one could follow the proceedings where everyone went used as reason to not have services in local languages. Yes. Yeah. Because it actually, ironically, the more that you segregated, the more that you weren't universal. I had a friend that went to World Youth Day, and it was like we're all just sitting there minding our own business, and someone suddenly broke into a Latin hymn, and boom, everyone started singing. Yeah. Okay, let's see. In my humble opinion, they punish Latin Mass, says Salty Traveling Sea, because it is a core of Western civilization, something globers are fully engaged in destroying. I hate to say that, but I think that there might be some accuracy to what you say. Yeah. Like, why else hate it so much? Why put it on a watch list? I mean, for crying out loud. It is the core of Western civilization. Well, think about it. Music, art, the expression of Christianity, unambiguous. This is another thing about in Latin. Unless you are unbelievably brilliant, you're not going to mess around with the wording and stuff in Latin, like the way that sometimes you will find. Sometimes you'll even find some masses where the priest will start to play around with the words. Let me be generous and say that. You really can't do that in Latin. It's just too hard. You just got to kind of say it. You got to stick to the script. Yeah, but also understand that if you, even where Mass was in Latin, the Mass was the fixed parts, and some of the movable parts were in Latin, but things like the sermons and all that were in the vernacular. They're in English, or back in the day, German, even in America, that where you had a predominantly people, it's like, okay, the sermon would be in German. So it wasn't like completely in Latin. There was an idea that because Mass parts were in Latin that people couldn't understand it. No, people knew exactly what it was. I mean, think about if you go to Mass even in English. If you're used to going to Mass, you know exactly what the priest is going to say before he says it when he gets to the canon. So if it's in Latin, English, it doesn't matter. If it's the same, you know what they're going to be saying. And if you weren't sure, you had missalettes. Anything to destroy Western civilization. Yeah, you guys are getting there on the key there about why they did it. But that's also why I get very frustrated with trolls. don't get me started on trolls. Ha ha, aren't I being funny? It's like, yeah, just keep ruining it for all of us. Or then again, some of these bots that were ruining it for everybody, were they even authentic? Were they even valid? Were they even real people? Were they even real? We've been learning more and more that so much of what we are seeing on social media is fabricated. It's not even real, it's not authentic. None of that. There's a new statue of Emperor Constantine at the Colosseum, I think. Um, oh, okay. Well, in any case, so that's a little bit of why we have a very sober feeling toward Pope Francis. And he's a good example of he wasn't able to satisfy anybody because, as I said, a lot of people so-called on the left, I hate to use those kind of words, but because that sounds too political, but there's a no other way to put it. He disappointed them because everyone thought, "Oh, look, he's gonna be doing this. They said so." I sometimes wonder. I don't want to get into a big conspiracy theory. Certain forces surrounding the Pope that would put things out there because it would be very odd. Like it would come out in this big thing. The Pope did this. The Pope said that, and then the Pope would be like, "What? No." This makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. So every time that they thought, "Oh, he's going to change this," he didn't. So the people on the left didn't like it, and then on the right, like I said, he just didn't he didn't strengthen the brethren. We need to have somebody that is able to do that. Able to do that and to do a better job with poping. And, I pray for that. I pray for that. I pray that the Holy Spirit will guide us, hopefully, in this next situation. I mean, we always believe that, the gates of hell will not prevail, and the gates of hell did not prevail. But this is always an odd situation when you do not have a pope. There is no pope. The next weeks are going to be a little crazy in the church. There is going to be some crazy times. We're going to be having first the funeral of the pope. I think relatively soon. I don't know how that works. I think there's certain rules about it. I don't understand about how that works, but yeah, we're going to have the funeral. Then the cardinals, the College of Cardinals are all going to be called in, and then they're going to do the conclave, and then we're going to have a new one. It should be very interesting, very interesting and exciting times. Archer Clon says, come to think about it, there are similarities with the bardic tradition. Certain parts of a saga would be memorized so the bard could concentrate on what was coming up. Hit that like button for Our Lady of Easter Roses. Yes, we love our roses here at Miss Martin Muses. Thank you. Not to be dismissive, says Archer Collin, but perhaps having parts of the Mass in Latin allow the officiant to concentrate on what is different on that particular occasion. Certainly. But those are what we call the ordinaries of the Mass, as well as the Latin. And it also helps you to maybe get into the zone if you're not thinking about what you're saying. Very similar to what happens in the rosary. It helps you get into a little bit of a more meditative state. You're not thinking about the words because you know the words. Also, there's just something very mysterious about having a sacred language. Since the dawn of time, since we're hanging out in caves, being cavemen and all that, there is always like a language for ceremonies, for religious ceremonies, elevated language, like something that you only do when you're praying. So that is kind of what you do when you have Latin. I mean, trust me, the only time I'm sitting around doing anything in Latin is if I'm praying or if I'm singing. But same idea. It's It gets you into the zone, and it's very beautiful, and it has strong anthropological things, and I think that that's why they tried to crush it. One thing that Pope Benedict really came down on is of having a proper translation of the Mass into English, as when they translated it in English, they didn't even translate it accurately. Gosh, if we'd have had the internet during Vatican II, life would have been so much easier, I think, over the last 60 years. So he was like, "You gotta translate it accurately, dummies." He didn't say dummies, I added that, and I almost said something stronger. So we now at least have an accurate translation from the English into Latin, but if you didn't know, you wouldn't know. Ugh, okay. Sorry, did Teresa say a better job of poping? Yes. I mean, that's a think about it, fathering. Think about a father. Could have done a better job. It's like you need to be a better father. You need to father better. Fathering. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, we need a good pope. Um, poping not. Oh dear. All right. Let's see. If you want to be pedantic, oh no, that's how memes are created. I'm like a reverse autocorrect. Archicon says many religions have at least one aspect of mystery cult, such as a secret language. That's right. Yeah. I mean, except it wasn't completely, I mean, secret because we knew it. But yes, you're exactly right. There's something to be said about that. It's what we call mystery. And let's just be honest, if bringing everything down in our religion, if it were to bring people in, have you seen the numbers to prove that? No. Is talking down to our priests. Oh, you like tradition? You want to be like a priest, like a priest should be? Oh, quit being so rigid. It's like, oh, fine, then I won't be a priest, Like, why would a man go off and want to be a priest if, they got enough trouble to begin with? So that's why you see where there's tradition, you see these big, huge numbers. I mean, there were huge amounts of converts over this weekend, and it was very traditional-ish, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So as we go through, I guess I will be Catholic explaining for sure, conclave. I will be Catholic explaining the sede vacantism situation. Um, I think there's like many different rituals. I think there's like a mourning wreath put on the Vatican or something. I don't know. I'm relatively new to all of this. This is only the third pope that has passed away in my lifetime. And, think maybe we might need to get a younger priest because believe it or not, it's the younger priests that are more solid than the older priests. Because the older ones right now, those are the ones that were part of all of that 60s, 70s, let's destroy everything kind of communist stuff. Yeah, for lack of a better word. Salty Traveling Sea said the field of 8 likely cardinals to replace Ismotli Francis agenda aligned, but if the church picks a more traditional one, well, no, things have changed. Yeah. Well, I think I don't know. I would just say beware of the media. We don't know who is in line to become the pope. We have no idea. There's an expression, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans for the future. We know that the media is going to try to get ahead of this and they're going to try to demoralize the faithful. We know this. So I probably not going to be delving too much into who the pope might be, or if I am, it's going to be more from sources I trust. Because at the end of the day, it could be anyone going in there. And stranger things have happened. But yeah, I'm sure that the media is already trying to take us all down because they don't want to. They want us to despair. They want us to. We shall see. We shall see. Archicon says, I've seen in some places that apparently church attendance has actually increased among the younger generation, although I'm not sure what denominations they may be. Actually, that's across the board. That's across the board. Now, maybe not in the numbers that you might have seen in the past, but definitely if people are going to church, it's going to be the younger ones. And even at where I go to mass, people my age and younger, I guess I'm not young anymore, but one time I was young, but people that aren't from the 60s and 70s, not that older generation, the boomers, they're not they're the ones that are rebellious. If you're still going to church after all of this stuff has been happening in all the Christian denominations across the world, across definitely Western civilization, you're not going to go for something lefty, namby-pamby, and boring. You're just not going to go to church for that. I mean, I'd go light incense in the field if I wanted to. Not that there's anything wrong with that, okay? But that's what I would do. Why are you gonna go to church? You're gonna go to church because you believe it, and yes, that is true. Younger people, media is fake, yes. Based is tea-based. Oh, dear. I don't know what I said that was based, but okay. Hello, Buddy Hepburn. More if they pick an Jesuit, seeing will remain the same or more in the direction Pope Francis was inclined to follow. Yeah. Well, I think there's a reason why we've only had one Jesuit pope, and that was him. Maybe they've learned their lesson, but just because someone's a Jesuit, that doesn't necessarily mean there's awful. I mean, Father Fessio, he's a Jesuit. Father Mitch Pacwa, he's a Jesuit from EWTN, so they're all bad. I don't even know how many Jesuit cardinals we have. Yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah. Notorial Lifeform says, "Do you think it is possible for authenticity to take a greater hold on media in the future?" No, not the media. No, he's asking Salty, but yeah. Archer Clone says, "I think it is also mentioned that the majority of what one might call the new worshippers are actually young men. Not sure what that implies, but that is probably a good thing." Yeah, and I think there's a reason for that, and why young men are so drawn to tradition. Spoiler alert, it's not feminine. Yeah. Okay, I gotta keep my eye on the clock because I do have Pilates. My goodness gracious. But yeah, this is gonna be pretty intense few weeks because, of course, it does say a lot because we're talking about Western civilization here when you think about the church. So there is a secular kind of consideration, but also, there is, of course, the spiritual. And we really do hope to change course. Hope the Holy Spirit will help us change course. One could argue, Pope Francis kind of gently went into the great beyond, maybe at an opportune time. Let me just put it to you that way. Let's see. Not the mass. Okay, okay, Salty Traveling Sea is talking about not the mass media. I'd be very skeptical of any new supposedly conservative sites that just appear. All the globalists have a psyop to demoralize and co-op. That is true. I tell you, I have been so blackpilled, and you've probably been following that, Salty Traveling. I'm trying not to be too awful, but when I realized how many influencers are actually fake and do not have our best interest in mind, and that they are actually working to demoralize us. So that's why I have severely cut back on my social media use. And I always tell people, please do not feel anything personal if it doesn't seem like interacting or stuff. It's because I'm just not interacting basically at all, because there's infiltrators. And sometimes it's hard to know who, so I'll just, stay away from them. And that's why I always say, to dip slightly into politics, boy, does our current president need to be careful. Do not repeat the mistakes you did before, pal. Just knock it off. Be careful. You cannot trust people. I mean, there's people out there that really want to destroy you. In the same way people want to destroy us. What's the deal with Jesuits? Said in Pro Life Forum. Yeah, I know. I don't know. Because back in the day when they were founded, they were pretty cool. St. Ignatius of Loyola, St. Francis Xavier, and there's many, many really good ones. What happened was, my humble opinion, if you do believe in spiritual warfare, well, if you have something that's really solid and really doing good for the church, winning souls, well, what would the enemy wanna do? He'd wanna infiltrate it, and infiltrate it was big time in the '60s. Salty Traveling Sea says, "It may sound funny, but Alex Jones woke me up." And he's a yeah, I agree. He's a ranting lunatic, but he's kind of been right sometimes. Isn't that crazy? We have a large youth congregation at my university, says Betty Hepburn. I went to a private Catholic boys' school and almost college. Got better funding to go somewhere else, and I'm happy with the Catholic community here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You go to any college thing going on, you're gonna see some solid stuff. We sometimes say it's the blue hairs that are ruining everything, and I'm not talking about the ones who dye their hair. Salty traveling, that's a very long story. Oh, now they're all about liberation theologies or communism. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's why having a pope from Argentina maybe wasn't such a great idea to begin with, especially a Jesuit. Yeah. So we will see. We will see. I mean, I'm a believer. I believe that, the Holy Spirit's working in there. And regardless, the historian in me is saying we are in for an interesting few weeks. Was it 2 billion Roman Catholics around the world? And even if you are not a Roman Catholic, look at the demographics. I forget, what, 500 million non Catholic Christians? Correct my numbers if I'm wrong. It does influence. It does, especially the West. It does. So we need to stay vigilant, and support orthodoxy wherever you see it. We have a $2 super chat. Well, thank you, Salty Traveling Sea. Exceptional show today. Thanks. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. And it's not usual that I do breaking news, and like I said, I don't want to sound so negative, but I also have to be honest. There are things that we need to be honest about, that there has been damage that has been done to the faithful, and it was friendly fire. And I don't believe in friendly fire. Friendly fire never does good. All right? You know, we've got enough problems in our lives. We do. I want to thank you so much for the $2 super chat, and thank you for being here. And for that, you, sir, get another road. Thank you. Betty Hepburn said, "Well, we did see a lot of C&E Catholics this weekend. LOL." Yeah. Well, and here's the thing about the C&Es. Hey, all right. Yeah. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. But sometimes that's the beginning of a journey for a lot of people. You just never know. And we're all on our different journeys, and we need to, be good to each other and everything. And be understanding. Oh, it is North Pole Life Forum, rather. He has given a $4 super chat. A $4 super chat. Agreed, salty, exceptional, matched your two. Aw, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the $4 super chat, and thank you for being here. And for that, you, sir, get a rose. Well, I hope I've been kind of fair and balanced. Trust me, I should be bawling my eyes out right now. When John Paul II died, I bawled and bawled and bawled and bawled. I mean, it was like I'd lost my own father. I just feel sad, if that makes sense. Not sad in the other sense of it's just sad. And if you are of a Roman Catholic disposition, yes, we need to pray for him, in charity, because he, at the end of the day, he was a man. Is meeting his maker, and just like anyone else who passes, but for the grace of God, go us. And um, we'll see. Yeah, friendly fire is an oxymoron. Yeah, drinks all around. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it is an oxymoron, but that's why it's so bad. You can't. We've done that in America too, and it is interesting how politics has mirrored church politics has sometimes mirrored all of that, and one could argue maybe because they're working together. We all know how rhinos. You want to talk about friendly fire? My goodness. Pro life form. The first John Paul was only pope for 1 month. What happened? Godfather 3. Oh yeah, according to Godfather 3, he was gently removed. I think the official story is he had a heart attack. Who knows? You see, and that's what I'm saying is stranger things have happened. I just think about what's happened in the last year. Just think about it. It's insane. Hell, let's think about what's happened in the last 5 years. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for all of your feedback, and thank you for your support. We're going to be covering this. It's going to be conclave time. It's going to be funeral. It's going to be a whole bunch of Catholic explaining. Jeannie Mac. Heart attack. Yeah, quote unquote. I'm just telling you. Well, I mean, maybe he has. It's absolutely true. He had a heart attack. John the Fifth. Sorry, John 5, rather. Good morning. Why, good morning to you. Good morning. And yes, we will definitely be praying for the Holy Father today. And lots of news. Stay tuned probably to Raymond Arroyo. If you want to follow anyone on X, you're going to see some solid coverage from him. Just like anyone, they have their biases, but he will not be trolling. I think that the usual influencers will be doing everything they can to pretend that they're wanting to be supportive, but they're just going to try to just demoralize people and get their clicks. I'm very cynical about that. I hate it. I'm new to that type of conclave, not the Pope John V. Yeah, I know we've been talking too much on it this semester at Miss Martin University. Darn right. Yeah. I mean, frankly, yeah, we're going to be pontificating. Pontificating. All right. So thank you very much. Thank you, John V. Thank you, Arthur Collin. Thank you, John 5. Thank you, let's see, Buddy Hepburn and Norporeal Life Form. Thank you for the $4 super chat, and Salty Traveling Sea for the $2 super chat, as well as the super sticker. We had Greek Letter Guy. Thank you for being here. We had Stieg was around giving the best conspiracy theory I've seen so far, that it all has to do with him wanting to play the Oblivion remastered. I forget how he worded it, but it was very good. Thank you, Adega Outlaw. Thank you for being here. Thank you for condolences about Biggles Met. Let's see. Oh gosh, I'm reading some of these comments. All right, and if the rumors are true, we have an hour and a half before the new Oblivion. We have, oh gosh, all the stuff about Vance. Like, really? Oh dear. Soul Extraction, thank you for being here. And Rachel Percy Art. If I missed anyone, it was not intentional. But things jump around, etc., etc., etc. And I'm just sorry. Never let a woman be in charge of anything. Sort of poop is Kruber. And I think that is it. So, Ubaldo T, Gorillas, Concerned Thoughts, IIP, thank you. Not the news I wanted to wake up to. Yeah. I mean, people are sad, and, we just have so many different feelings. So have a great day, everyone. Have a great day. And be certain to, may your day way be clear and your journey safe. As far as John 5, I'm just staying away from that because you know that the media is going to try to mess with us. So thank you very much. And be certain, to be ready, because you never know when your number will be up. So YOLO.